Fort Sumter. This is a CDG by Mark Herman. Now, this is a stripped down CDG. My history with stripped down CDGs has not been terribly good so far. There was 1955, the Cold War, which was a spying type one. Really didn't do a lot for me. Wow, I'm getting some weird color. I wonder if my camera's finally dying here. I may have to go to the yellow camera. A graininess. I'm sure you can see it over, or maybe it's just the texture of this table, because the game looks fine. 1955 didn't impress me. It was about as simple as you can get. You're playing on I think 3 linear tracks, and that's it, to move something about. A marker back and forth. And then 13 Days, which just didn't feel like it had the same kind of oomph that, a Twilight Struggle has, obviously. In part because no die rolling, nothing to generate sort of interest in that sort of sense. I believe this one is designed off that 13 Days kind of impetus from what I read in the designer's notes. Mark didn't go so far as to name the game that he was talking about, but 1955 didn't get a lot of buzz. 13 Days did. But this one's about a particularly interesting situation to me, which is the secession crisis. I had to read the designer's notes to understand just what part the game is about. It's post-election, the events that take place there, culminating in Fort Sumter, possibly. It is the most important space on the board, maybe. Okay. This is going to be a game just about putting cubes in spaces. Each space can hold, these are the spaces, each space can hold 4 cubes, but there are a few little things that you can do to influence stuff. It is a CDG, so the cards have a number rating, which you can use to pull cubes and put them on the board, or you can fire off the event. However, there are some additional effects to it. First of all, the color to the card indicates who can use the event, and there are some split cards, which the event can be used by either player. This is a final crisis value. You're going to be handed 4 of these cards in each of 3 turns, basically. And one of those 4 cards you're going to be banking for the end of the game portion. In addition to that, you have these objective cards, which are going to tell you something you need to get. Now, you get handed 2 of these each turn in order to, and you pick one of them and discard the other. The ones that get discarded get shuffled back into the deck immediately, so you don't know what people have chosen not to play. All you know is what you have and eventually what's been played. We've set up the board. All the political markers are here. As these move through the various zones of the game, from normal to escalation to tension up to the final crisis, some additional bonus cubes will become available to the players as they breach those levels. And there are some special rules to reward the player who doesn't push the crisis a little bit further. Although in the final crisis, there's a reward in both directions. The person who pushes it to the final level has more pieces to play at the end game. However, they take a 1 victory point penalty for pushing the game so far. Base play of the game, like I said, you get 4 of these strategy cards, 2 objective cards. You pick one of your objective cards, the other one gets shuffled back in, and then each player alternates playing a strategy card. They can either play it for its point value or for its event, and their final card gets slipped into the final crisis, and that'll be available when you hit the 4th turn. Then After all the cards have been played, there are certain spaces, these white bordered spaces. So the spaces are divided into two, along a couple of categories. For one thing, the color and the symbol on them indicates a type of space, and collecting an entire class of space is worth a victory point at the end of each round. The white bordered spaces give you a special ability at this moment, the ability to pivot within that class of pieces. Okay. The Unionist player starts the game on turn 1. I don't know how that's decided later. I have read these rules, but, you know, this is me we're talking about, and I haven't played it. Yeah. I'm hoping to do this as a quick hit because, again, I don't know how into that, into the style of play, the style of light CDGs, ultra light CDGs, I really am. But between GMT's sale and a Mark Herman design, Mark Herman almost always puts something interesting in. This is not 13 days, and it sure isn't 1955. Okay. So when you play the card, you can play it as either the event or for the value. If you play it as the value, that's the number of tokens you get to add to spaces on the map. Now, your tokens are going to come first from your token pool and then from here. But the event cards have some special factors to them. They might get you more tokens on the board, but they limit where you get to put them. If you play it just for points, you get to put them, I think, wherever you like. However, you're only allowed to have 4 of each player's tokens in any given space. What else do we have here? This is the time track marker. These suckers mark the number of victory points. On the backside, there's a +10. The game comes with, GMT is doing a good job of this, extra of every kind of piece. Just a single extra, but some of the pieces are singular pieces, so whatever. Because it's real easy to lose a piece. Okay. The first time you take a token from a section, you breach that section, you finish your turn, and then you get a special action. Now, when you take out of escalation, you get 2 extra pieces afterwards, and those will be added to your token pool. Not quite sure how much that does. And that's both players, yeah. So that's just really, I don't know. Because it's possible you could burn your way up into tension before you get your pieces. The first player to breach tension gets 3 bonus tokens to the token pool, but then the other player gets to put the peace commissioner into any space on the map. Then the second player who breaches tensions gets his 3 bonus tokens, and that's it. When you breach the final crisis, the first player to breach it gets 4 pieces, but they lose a victory point. The second player to breach it only gets 2 extra pieces, and they don't lose a victory point. The Peace Commissioner himself, when you throw him down on the board, he's going to have some effects. Now, there's some event cards that also move him around. His effect is you cannot place or remove political capital tokens, the cubes, in the space he occupies, including via events, I assume also including via the pivot space, but let's see. All right, after each player's played 3 strategy cards for the round, the first player checks to see who controls each pivot space. If they control the pivot space, whoever controls it, but the first player gets first call here. They can move any 2 tokens, or remove any 2 tokens, or move token and remove 1 token. Now, that's anything within that crisis dimension. So you'd be able to shift other people's tokens around. Basically, you've got some capacity to move things around so that you get control of all 3 spaces, which is important because after the pivot spaces are moved, if you have the majority of pieces in all 3 of the spaces of one category, you get a victory point for that at the end of each round. After you do that, you reveal the objective card. that you've got for the turn, and if you meet that objective, you will get a victory point. I believe it's only for your own card, which doesn't seem to be the same as what is stated in the playbook. The playbook seems to indicate that if either player, if you have the other player's objective space, you get a victory point for it, but I'm not sure. After that, if you scored a victory point for your card, you also get the event on that card. And then the cards are removed from the game. Okay. When you hit the final crisis zone, at the end of any round where both final crises are breached, or after going through 3 rounds of strategy card play, you go into the final crisis. The Peace Commissioner leaves the game. You take the cards that you've got in the final crisis box, which might not be 3 of them. The game might end early. And you get random cards to fill you out so that you have 3 each. Those cards are turned upside down to their colored bar. And now they're turn the cards upside down so the color bar and type are now face up at the top of their cards. This is the only portion of the card that will be available. Each player then secretly places their final crisis cards, these aren't revealed at any point before this, face down on the table in the order they want to play them, the first one on the top, and then you reveal them. Now, if the locations match, each player starting with the first player has to remove one of his tokens from a space of that location type, or remove 2 of his tokens from any space or space on the board. So if you end up matching, you have to reduce what you have there. If the location types don't match, each player starting with the first player may move up to 2 of his tokens from any spaces and or token pool onto 1 of or 2 spaces that match the card that he played. So by playing a given crisis type card, you're going to ensure you're trying to play for more of your pieces in that type of zone. Then after all 3 of those crisis cards are played, you'll get a victory point for each dimension that you completely control, a point for Fort Sumter, yay, and if there's at least 3 or more tokens remaining in your token pool, more than the opponent's token, you get a point. What are points? The initial intention was to make them strategic will. I think they're sort of the impetus once the war starts, or it might even be possible that you might be able to judge the events of the game as such that there is no war. I think that would be pretty hard, though. I think I don't see Lincoln backing down, and I don't see the secessionists backing down. But we'll see how the cards play out and what they look like, and if we can call it as not a war, we will. Okay, and you do this for each, whoever has the most victory points wins the game. However, if they're tied, Fort Sumter's the tiebreaker, because it's the name of the game. If no one controls Fort Sumter, whoever controls the most spaces on the map wins. If it's still a tie, the Union player wins. Now, the argument there is because they have to go first in the final crisis round. As far as I can tell, they just have to go first throughout the entire game. I saw nothing that switched that. There's an optional rule for discarding events. This is similar to, there's something in Twilight Struggle where if somebody plays a card for points, I think, or discards a card. I don't know. If somebody gets rid of a card that they can't use, but you can use, you're able to sort of steal it. Well, in this case, you're able to steal it by discarding one of your own strategy cards that's worth at least as much, but then you get the event for that card. I don't think I'm going to play with that. I'm not quite sure what it's meant to represent, but it's an option that you can throw in that adds a different vector to the strategy of it. And that's about it. Now, can I do this as a quick hit? I think maybe I can. So I'm going to keep going. I'm not so sure how much I can do this as a quick hit. I've already spent 12 minutes, going over the rules. It's supposed to be a short game. All right, let's do it. One thing I did want to say is this is a lot of box, and a big armored GMT box. It's not a huge map, but this could fit in a 13 days size box. This could be, yeah. The only thing that would be a problem, the rule book is really small, obviously. The playbook, and I love, the amount, other than the complete playthrough of the game, the playbook is something I wouldn't want to lose, but it does seem kind of strange to have, a full-size box there. All right, let me finish setup. I'm gonna have to shuffle a little bit more, deal some cards out. One thing though, these kind of games, they're really hard to solo in the sense that most of it, a lot of the game is about bluffing and, trying to convince the other person that you're going somewhere else that you're not, and that you've got different cards someplace. And that just doesn't, come across as strong. So the first thing we do is we look, I'm going to take the Union first here, I shifted the map around. Look at our two options. Federal Arsenal's objective, if you play this card and control the Federal Arsenal space, you may remove up to 3 tokens from the armament spaces, or remove up to 1 token from any space. This being the pivot space. So that becomes ideal, and that's kind of advantageous because that helps me work towards Fort Sumter if I go with that objective. On the other hand, Montgomery, if you play this and control Montgomery, you remove up to 2 tokens from political or public opinion spaces. Now, political spaces are interesting because if you can score political spaces, these bells, at the end of the game, none of the victory objectives are going to match. Let's take a look at what our cards are here. So we have 1 armaments. Minutemen add up to 3 tokens to an armament space. Now, what's interesting there is if we pick an armaments as our final crisis card, then we're kind of hurting ourselves towards making this objective. But we can't play this as an event, so this is not a bad final crisis card choice for us. Secession, plantation crisis, we can't do that, so that's a 1-point card that would be in our hand, and we probably can't win the secession. That favors the secessionist player. Stephen Douglas, add up to 3 tokens to secession or political spaces. That's very tempting, even though it wouldn't help us towards our goal. Maybe we go for this goal instead, especially since we also have a public opinion, which also is affected by this. Louisiana secedes. We can't play that, but it's a 2-point card, which is a little better. Do we want to put an armaments card in there, even though we're not going to do it? I think that's going to be our goal. I think what we're going to do is we're going to discard this and keep this as our hidden objective. Keep it face up so I can see what I'm doing. I haven't committed yet, but this is my intention for my final crisis. Okay, now let's look at our secessionist buddies. And they have Washington as an objective. If you played this card and control Washington, you remove 2 tokens from political or public opinion. And border states, if you played this card and control the border state space, you may remove up to 2 tokens from secession spaces, or remove up to 1 token from any space. The way the rules are stated, it looks like you just get a victory point for your own cards. Wow, these are some nice cards, aren't they? Events that can be used by either player. Peace Commissioner. Place the Peace Commissioner to either Washington or Fort Sumter. Now these are all armaments cards. Gosh, I don't know. I'm so fitted towards the armaments. This one I can't play. This is just 1 point for myself. So getting an armaments card into my hidden objective doesn't sound like a, I'm sorry, getting that into my final crisis doesn't sound like a bad choice. Add up to 3 tokens to Fort Sumter and Fort Pickens. Wow, I'm really set up for armament stuff here. Oh, this is a British-controlled one, or a Union-controlled one. Peace Commissioner, I may not want to do that. For a 3-point card, I don't think so. Russell of the Times, make up to 4 of your tokens from any public opinion spaces to your token pool, and then they can move to secession or political. But this gets me 3 pieces. That only allows, the event only allows me to move them. So I think I am going to be spending 8 points in cards. Now, which of these do I want? The Washington lets me blow away political or public opinion, whereas this allows me to blow away from secession. I have the edge on secession, so I'm going to throw that card. And this is going to be my objective in the cards that I play. For play of a real game, you'd have your hidden objectives hidden. These would be hidden as well and not showing yet. And your cards in your hand, which includes this right now, all hidden. However, for me to understand and be able to play well, I'm going to keep things face up. That just lets me see what I plan on doing. I'm going to play my weakest card first, the Plantation class. Now, what is my hidden objective? It's Montgomery, which allows me to play around in political and public opinion. Montgomery is a political space. So I'm going to play this, and I'm going to drop a point in Washington. Doesn't really show what I'm trying to do, does it? Not really. But who knows? Now over here, this is not yet committed, but I'm hoping to play it that way. I'm going to do the same with this. Now for him, his hidden objective is Washington. He sees an immediate play in Washington. It will not hurt me to play in Washington. Do I want to put a public opinion in there instead of this? I don't think so. So I think I'm going to play this for 2 points. Now this is the kind of card that you could trump in with. So the Unionist player could grab this card by discarding that card if I was playing with that option. I will get 2, and I'm going to throw these into Washington because that's my objective and he's shooting for it. Okay. That gets us back to the Union player. Now, I could add up to 3 tokens into political spaces. If I commit myself in there, boy, that's going to look ugly. What is my objective here? I can remove 2 tokens from political if I'm in Montgomery. That's appealing. And so I will play this for 2 cards. Now, I couldn't be throwing away cards that I just can't use with impunity if I was playing with that option, and that's probably what it does for me. Okay. I am only going to have 3 more tokens. Now I could grab the secession issue by grabbing the border states with Stephen Douglas. And that would allow me then to move 2 pieces, get a victory point that way. I would like to get Montgomery. That affects political and public opinion. Public opinion is these. I just threw 2 down. Fuck. What is the order? Pivot space comes before objective cards. I'll keep challenging in Washington. Puts us back over here. He's like, oh boy. Move up to 4 of your tokens from public opinion to your token pool and then move them to secession or political. Not a good move at this point. Peace Commissioner, almost definitely not a good move. I've got a lot of tokens coming to me. I'll play this as a 3-point to get pieces. Now, I'm interested in Washington. I will dominate it, I guess. And what else do I want to do? I'll put a piece in Montgomery. I don't know that it's Montgomery, but I'm kind of thinking, it's more important than the northern state houses. Am I playing well? Damned if I know. Okay, Douglas is the next, up to 3 tokens in secession or political. That's going to put this to escalation, so 2 of my tokens go over to the token pool, but I've got these 3 to play in secession or political. Okay. I need to control Montgomery to get any advantage, and everything's got to go in here then, because I got to put 2 in to control Montgomery. If I can remove 2, I can get this here and get control of that. So I'm going to put this in the northern states because that is also a political space. And Douglas has done his job. That puts it over to us. Now, I have a 3-point card. Currently, I control Washington. But not the pivot space. Fuck, what does that mean? God damn it. I screwed up, didn't I? Oh well, we'll let it sit. Because of the order, the objective card comes after. Now, that's enough to get me control, but the pivot space isn't there. Yeah, but I have no choice with the Union. The only way I'm going to score a point is to do this. Okay, so from his side, he's probably looking and saying, well, either I don't understand something or he's made a mistake. I probably don't understand something. That puts this card here. Committed. And again, it's face down in actuality. And for us, 3 more pips. We will take those. That gets us escalation. Now our next pips get drawn from here, but either in Washington or Fort Sumter. No, that's for the Peace Commissioner. Okay, so this is just a 3-pip piece. I have control of this. I could remove 2 pieces. That could get me this. So I can either fight here, where I don't really understand what's going on, or I could drop these 3 pieces somewhere else and get control. I'm going to drop them in the federal arsenal. Because I have this armaments card, and I'm playing harder for armaments. Fair enough. Now, the pivot tokens. First, the Union gets to do its pivot tokens. I am not in control here. I am not in control anywhere. We go to the rebels, and they're going to spread out to here. That's going to be worth a victory point. They've got the pivot space here. They could remove pieces. I control this already. I am going to remove his 2 pieces, and they go back to the token pool in Montgomery. Does that make sense? I can't get full control here. Let me see the pivot. I don't feel like that is giving me all my options. No, it is. Okay. Yeah, I need control of all of them to gain anything. There's not much I can gain here. I'm going to remove some blue tokens. It's what I want to remove. I do not want him in control in Montgomery. And then the question is, which do I want here? I'll just take his 2 out of Montgomery. Okay. And that's without knowing this, but whatever. Okay, 1 point per crisis dimension. The rebels get 1 point because they have the armaments. They do not have this. The Union doesn't have it either. Score objective cards. Okay, the Union has to go first, I guess. Montgomery, I don't have it. I get nothing. Still have to reshuffle those. Washington, the Confederates do have it. They get another victory point. And they may remove up to 2 tokens from political or public opinion spaces. Well, we're going big and violent because that's kind of my nature, honestly. And that is the end of the first round. I reshuffled the objectives and deal out another hand. Yeah, let's take a look at, this coloring is really weird. What's happening over here? The different player choices. First of all, for the Union, I'm going to get rid of the Texas card. I don't think I'm likely to be working on secession terribly much. And go for the newspapers card as my goal. And that'll give me a lot of power elsewhere if I can win that. So that's kind of cool. Now, the armaments is what I'm planning on putting into my final crises. It's a 1 point card, and it bonuses me with more armaments. Again, focusing on that Sumter, but this is troublesome. I need to get some force into there if that's the case. For my own cards, hey, I'll take the big point cards, and this one, the Seward ability, is kind of cool. It's 3 points in the political spaces. That may help me here. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be able to get control of the political spaces, but getting more tokens in it seems like a valuable goal. Again, first play, and I'm really kind of blundering around. I read the player's notes, which are part of the design notes, but whatever. Over here, Deep South is great and all, but this is a better ability. I got to jump on it. Let's keep working on the armaments. I'm planning on throwing the chase card in here. It's only a 1 point card. It's towards secession. My other option in terms of 1 point cards is a public opinion one. I feel like I'm more likely to win secession, so I want to put that in. Maybe I'm misdoing this, but it's just what I think I should be doing. So let's look here. Again, I don't necessarily want to play my big cards first. My weakest card is this Florida Secedes card. So I'm going to play this. And I get 2 cubes. Now, where do I want to put them? I want to set up into newspapers. These are going to go in political. These, I could get the Peace Commissioner into play. So I don't want to play this card yet. I'm actually going to play the Seward card and get 3 into political spaces. I'm going to put them here. We'll get 2 in Washington. That's putting a threat on Washington, making it look like I'm more interested in that, which maybe I'm not. But getting a lot of pieces in place is useful. I can always use a redeploy card since I have the pieces already down. Escalation didn't cost me anything to do. Okay, that puts us over to them. Again, the objective is theoretically here. I'll keep it near where it belongs just for that. This is the card I'm planning on ditching probably. I want to work towards Sumter. I already have Sumter under control. I'm pretty happy with what I've got here. What about these others? This one gets me bonuses and actually allows me to pull things away from the armaments, so that's very valuable. What about the New York Press? Add up to 3 tokens in public opinion, or remove 2 opposing tokens from 1 public opinion. Oh, these are both union only. Okay, so I'll use this to play 1. And what am I interested in? I'm interested in Sumter. I'm interested in secession. I'm interested. I kind of worried about what the hell he's doing down here. There's not much I can do about it, though. If he can remove pieces or something, I can't do shit about it. So I'm going to drop this into the border states and start working on the secession card because I'm in the lead in the armaments. What the hell? Again, not sure how this is all going to play out. Okay. Back over here. What did I want? Don't want to freeze Washington, that's for sure. Florida secedes. That's only 2 tokens. Play that. I think I had better put my play in the newspapers space. I'm going to put it in newspapers, and I don't want him controlling this, so I'll throw 1 in there, because I'm pretty sure I want to start contesting the armaments. I could remove 2 opposing tokens from 1 armament space. That's becoming more and more appealing. So I'm going to take 2 tokens here. Now I have just broken the tensions box. Hoo-hoo. Yep. Yeah. I want Fort Sumter. I've got Fort Sumter. I'm going to put 1 in the Federal Reserve. And okay, dropping here to maintain control of that, I guess. And that was this card that I tossed. Right? Okay. So what happens? I get these tensions chits, and he gets the chance to place the Peace Commissioner. Is there somewhere I would like to freeze? Yeah. I don't know where. I mean, I've got the lead here, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, I'll put him in the newspaper space. Whatever. Okay. My last piece is a 3-piece one. I could move the Peace Commissioner, but that doesn't really help me. What do I want to do? I'm going to fill out the newspaper spaces. With him there, I'm pretty safe. So I'll take the abolitionists and the state assemblies. I got 1 more. What is that 1 more? I'll contest the arsenal. And that puts another card here. And for him, well, I could remove him from the federal arsenal, or I could take 2 points, or I could get 3 points in political spaces. I'm going to play this to remove these 2 Union tokens, thus getting strength in the military. And then I drop this in here. Again, these are upside down, theoretically. Okay. Pivot spaces. Unions first. No control. Control of the newspaper. Nothing much I can do with that. I'm happy. For the Confederates, they have control of this. They're happy with it. I could shift somebody over to Fort Sumter, but these guys are kind of potent where they are. So, I'm good. Um, okay. Score 1 point for each crisis dimension that's controlled. For the Union, they have this one. For the Confederates, they have only this one. Oh, border states I controlled. I could spread out in that, but I don't see a point to it yet. Okay, so the Confederates get a point as well. What about our cards? Newspapers, we control newspapers. I may remove up to 2 tokens from any one space. And I don't think that can affect this either. I'll get rid of his Washington tokens. Goes over to his Fort Sumter. He holds, oh, that's worth a victory point. He holds Fort Sumter, that's worth a victory point. If you played this card and control the Fort Sumter, you may remove 3 tokens from the armament spaces. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Or remove a token from any other space. This is more important than that, I guess. That's going to put us up to the 3rd. Let's see. Lincoln and Davis. Lincoln was elected here. Buchanan's lame duck session. This is Lincoln taking power at this point. This is the final regular turn, and we haven't cracked the final crisis yet, which if we had, we'd be over. That's something I have to remember. We're close. It'll probably happen this turn anyway. And let's see. The card choices, I've thrown the objectives out, and I've been doing that I'm not keeping. So this one, if I control the abolitionist space, I get the bonus, and that allows me to remove 2 tokens from any one space. My other option was state assemblies. I basically had a pair of the similar cards. I went with the pro-northern one because, I don't know. My own cards, most of them are pro-rebellion, so these 2 cards are essentially the same. They're both 1-point cards. As I get towards the end of the turn, I'm going to make my decision whether I want the public opinion or armaments. Right now I have 2 armaments in there. That may be enough. And we'll see where we're playing. These cards I'm definitely not going to be throwing in there, though. One has a special effect I can use, and one's a 2-point card. On his side, all these cards are useful to him, either as special effect, which is usually how you want things to go, and then that means I'm going to definitely play the garrison card as an armaments card. Let's go see what we want to do first. Ideally, I would like to get rid of one of these. However, I want to keep that flexibility. So I could either throw a bunch of tokens in border states or remove tokens from public opinion or political. I'd like to hold this card. This says add up to 2 tokens to the newspaper space. Unfortunately, I can't do that yet. So now I'm in kind of a shitty position. Do I want to expend my flexibility? Border states. That might not be such a bad idea to put that there. It might give me some flexibility. How does that endgame play work? Okay, so if they match, we can remove tokens from spaces. If they don't match, we move 2 of our tokens from any spaces or token pool into one of the 2 spaces that match the played location type. And so the tokens you have here are important. Of course, you could move them from the board. Remove up to 2 from public opinion or political. I think, oh, I can't play this for that. This is just a 2-point card. Okay. We'll hold on to this and consider whether we want to do that. And we will grab 2 of these and what's important to me. Fuck. It looks like I'm losing out on the military side there. My goal is the abolitionists. I have that already, so I'm in good shape there. I have enough capability here to do what I want to do. I'm going to drop these at the Federal Reserve. I got all those armaments. Doesn't necessarily mean that you want to match the things that you have on here, because you get some flexibility with it. But we'll see. Okay. And then the final crisis scoring is, again, the crisis dimensions, and you have to fully control them, which is tricky. Okay, so we go over here and move up to 4 of your tokens from any secession or political space to your token pool, and then add them anywhere. That's pretty potent. Add up to 3 tokens to public opinion or political. Remove up to 2 tokens, or remove up to 2 tokens from a political space. Mississippi secedes, add up to 3 tokens to a deep south, or remove up to 2 tokens from a secession or political space. Now, we have a pretty big pool here. We may not reach the final crisis. Add up to 3 tokens to the deep south. We have nothing in the deep south. Extra pieces here give us some flexibility, but it may be a little late. Remove up to 2 from a secession or political space. You can blow some of these away. I'm gonna... See, I don't know if I want to go over the edge here and lose a victory point for that. I've got some nice victory points. 3 tokens to public opinion or political. Not going to be able to grab that, which means I could deny him a point for it, but that's the best I could do. Political, on the other hand, I could do. Add up to 3 tokens to a public opinion or political spaces. Let's do that. Let's put 2 in Washington and 1 in the northern state houses. Okay. Over here. Right, I'm allowed to play that, yeah. Over here, I've got Greeley newspapers. I'm kind of holding on to him because there's a possibility that could swing. So let me think about this. Public opinion or armaments. Well, I don't have a lot of pieces in armaments. If I win, I can pull things into the armaments side. If we tie, we each lose tokens there. So I'm not really seeing myself as well positioned for the armaments. Public opinion, on the other hand, we're doing pretty well in. So I don't actually think I need that. I could play this for 1. That would force me into the public opinion. I don't think I want to do that. I'm going to play the public opinion token for 1 piece. That's all I can get off of it. And where the hell do I put it? Well, I don't want him to dominate the political in that way. Is it that simple, or do I dominate military? Jesus, I don't know. I got another card to play. Okay. He got a nice draw of cards, though. I feel like the Confederates are winning quite heavily. Not only do they have a couple points banked, but they've been doing pretty well. 3 tokens to the deep south. Do we want to breach? We actually wouldn't yet. We'd still get that. Move up to 4 of your tokens from secession, or add up to your token pool, and then they come back. Okay. Yeah, this combination lets me shift those deep space counters. I'm going to add 3 tokens to the deep south. Right, from secession or political. Oh no. Do I want to make him breach? He'll get more pieces if I breach, but he loses a victory point. Yeah, I want to force him to breach if I can. That's supposed to be worth about a half victory point to do that. Add up to 3 tokens to the deep south space. Let's do that. Okay. Well, looks pretty good for us for the secession part of things. It brings us over here. I ought to be swapping batteries. Well, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference which one I play, so we're going to tuck this one, and all we can do is take a token. And that, we're just breaching tension. Jeez. Oh, we definitely want to do this. That gives us these into our pool. We may not have a final crisis here. What would I do? What would I do with this final piece? What would Jesus do with this piece? We're going to drop it into the Federal Reserves, or the Federal Arsenal. That puts us over here. He's the last person to go. Now he has the option to move up to 4 tokens from secession pieces or political to your token tool and put them wherever the hell you like. I don't want to lose Washington, but it looks to me like this isn't going to be an issue. So I can take from secession and political. See, if he has a special card left, but he doesn't have anything to play, so this isn't going to get 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. They come back to my pool, and then they're in my hand here, and I can put them anywhere I like. Well, Border States is going to let me take this. Yeah, this is a powerful, powerful card. I can't take the newspapers, but I can take them away. No, I can't, because he can blast me out of anywhere. So, public opinion, I'm not going to get to play in. Military, though, let's put a piece there. Make sure he doesn't have the lead there. Wow, it's really great being last. I don't know what to do with these other tokens. I'm going to be putting an armaments card in. We don't know how things are going to go. Put another one in there. If I put 2 pieces in here, I will not be able to prevent him from knocking 2 out. I could put 3 in and prevent that. I don't know what to do. Just in case something weird is happening. I'll put 1 in Fort Sumter. And I feel very, very strong with them. Okay, so now we're at, save the 4th card, pivot spaces. Union goes first. They have 1 pivot space, this one. They don't want to touch anything there. That puts it to the Confederates, who have 2 pivot spaces. Military is one of them. And we're allowed to do what? We're allowed to move any 2 tokens, remove any 2 tokens, or move 1 token and remove a token. Okay. So, bye. That's the military, and we had another one in the border states. We can move the token where? It's only within the same region. I'm happy with the secession crisis cards. I don't know why I put an extra. Oh, in case there's a matchup of some sort. Okay. Now we score the victories for the crisis dimensions, and no. Border states, the secession crisis goes for 1 for the Confederates. The military goes for 1 for the Confederates. And the Unionists get 1 in public opinion, and that's it. Let me make sure we only have however many I think there is. 3. It looks like there's only 4. Okay. Now we score these cards. If you played this card and control the abolitionist, you may remove up to 2 tokens from any one space. Well, he does. He gets a victory point for the objective, and he can remove 2 tokens from any space. So here's the problem. Political no longer exists at this point in the game. It will not get played for. We're heavy on the military. I don't think we're going to be able to get control of the military. Like, we're completely devoted to that. But I'm going to remove 2 Confederate tokens from here. Confederates have the Deep South, so they get a victory point. And they can remove up to 2 tokens from secession spaces or 1 from any other space. Again, the political is not going to score. I could remove something from one of these. Those are worth a victory point each to the Union. Or I could make things a little safer and take them out of the arsenals. The reason I prefer doing that is that I'm in the lead. If I wasn't in such a heavy lead, I would probably go for one of these because prevent the victory point instead. Okay, now we move into the final crisis, which is here. The Peace Commissioner comes off. Okay, now we each secretly order our 3 crisis cards. Well, that's no big deal for the Unionists. But for the Confederates, what do we care about? This feels a little random, right? And that's one of the warnings on it. Even Herman says it's going to feel random, but he says it isn't. And I trust him, actually. I feel like I'm making decisions that aren't purely random. Let's put it that way. Well, secessionist isn't going to do much at all. So the question is, what does it matter? I feel like this actually is a completely random decision because it may not always be. It may be sometimes you want to make sure certain things happen first, but I don't really think it matters at all. And I don't have a die kicking around here. My default randomizer is down with Gloomhaven. Okay. I'll make that the first card down. I don't know which is which now. All right, this will be our order. Okay, so now we each flip one, and it's an armaments to an armaments. That means we matched. The first player has to remove a cube from a space matching the card or remove 2 cubes from any combination of spaces of their own. I'm in an armaments section. There are no blue pieces in armaments. I have to remove 2 pieces from the board. Make sure political doesn't just get cleared out. I think I can pull these off the board. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any penalty for that. Oh, I know what it is. So these actually do score points, but there's no danger because neither side has this last space. Okay. And he's got to remove 1 or 2 from the armaments section. Well, we got knocked out of Fort Sumter somehow. That kind of blows. Okay. Next one down. Armaments to secession. Okay. They did not match. Each player starting with the first can move 2 tokens from any space from the map or their token pool onto 1 or 2 spaces that match their crisis card color. That gets me into armaments. I definitely want to be in Fort Sumter. And Fort Pickens kind of just doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to come to enough to beat them in all of these, I don't think. I have a 3rd armaments. He's already out of armaments. maybe we'll be able to take it. We'll see. He's got secession. He gets to add one or two to secession. Well, that's not terribly useful. Why you don't want to do this in things that you are going heavily in. And then the final is going to be a match of armaments again, and it's a removal of one from that area. We're not going to get that, I don't know. All right. We're not going to get this, so let's remove that. The Confederates can remove an armaments or two from elsewhere. This does not hurt. Okay. And then we score a final crisis round, which is going to be what? Reach crisis dimension. Okay. So political isn't in play. The Union will get the popular still, and that's it. And it looks to me like the Confederates are going to get the secession crisis. There's another point for Fort Sumter. I think Confederates could have put more of a fight for that. If there's at least 3 or more tokens remaining in your token pool than your opponent has, the Union gets another point for too many tokens. It's getting closer. However, that is our final victory score, and the Confederates win. But close, which is, again, another one of the things that Mark mentioned, is that even if the cards favor one player to the other, except in the most extreme circumstances, and he did, I don't know, thousands of Monte Carlo experiments to try to prove this out. The total number of these chips that you have is going to come out very close, and with things like that kind of endpoint marker there, you're going to get the opportunity to do some catch up. Now, I screwed something up. I am certain of it. I was looking for who goes first in each turn. You remember that? Well, I remember something in the playbook saying that was the main balancing feature, is that the player who goes first gets shifted. But I'm not. Starting with the first player. The Unionists at the beginning of turn 1. Okay. But you know what it's not saying? It's not saying that switches, and I don't remember seeing that anywhere in the rules. I remember seeing it in the playbook. A hint to that. There's no sequence of play place where it says who the first player is. I think the first player is the person with the most victory points, with the tie going to the Union. I think that's the intention, but I'm not seeing it. So let me look a little harder. Okay, I found where it is. I'm not thrilled about this. I feel like it should be somewhere else. But first player, like there's no mention about first player switching or something. That should be baked into the sequence of play. The player with the current highest victory points is considered the first player. In case of a tie, the Unionist is first player. And that can change within a round of play. I don't know how often that's going to happen, but because victory points usually don't shift until the scoring round, but maybe there's some cards that do that. Okay. What do we have to say about it? Obviously, that rules mistake would have made a difference because the Confederates were in the lead right away, and that is a balancing factor. The fact that the Union had to go first every time, meant that they telegraphed their moves to the Confederates. So the Confederates had an option, once they picked their cards, to react to everything. So in that sense, this is a flawed playthrough. in the sense of getting a feel for the game. I'm not going to be able to tell you the balance after, even if I played it 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to be able to give you any kind of reasonable feel for that. From what little I saw, it felt like the Confederates player got better cards, and the Union was forced to go first every time. So between those two things, it felt like it gave them a slight edge, or 2 slight edges that built up together. Now, one of those should have gone away. The other one is a luck of the draw thing. My unwillingness to push these was kind of interesting. I was expecting to drive into the crisis kind of automatically, but I was interested in taking pieces off the board, especially using these special powers. The pivot power, which, it felt like the natural thing to do. Decrease your opponent. You're in a 2-player game. Take away his capabilities, especially since there's a limit to how many pieces can be in each space. It feels like removing the opponent's pieces is a more valuable choice. Now, the secessionists got more cards that they could use for the events, and thus the Unionists got more tokens sitting over her. What does that all mean? I don't know. Should I come back for some FaceTime on this? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Feels like such a pain to set up, but I know you all want to see my beautiful existence. Okay, Fort Sumter. When I first saw that this was going to be a kind of one of those more minimal, smaller CDGs, in 13 days and 1955. 1955 is kind of maybe more minimal. It's just the points, It's not a full CDG. It doesn't have events, if I recall correctly, but certainly 13 days. I felt cheated by them. I felt like, there wasn't enough going on to grab my interest, and there wasn't enough story to really grab my interest. This one proves that, you can do a pretty light CDG. It's certainly nowhere near as simplistic, but you can do a pretty light CDG that plays in a short period of time. This really goes quick. And put enough in it that it can grab at least my interest. I found myself saying, I'd like to play that a few more times. It's not just about trying to figure out how to outbluff the other player. That's not all that's going on here. There are enough mechanisms, enough different vectors to play along, enough weird little mechanisms to cause things to move around, enough events and everything, that I'm feeling myself, intrigued to see how much more fun I can have out of it. And that's pretty much probably the most that I could expect out of one play to get out of a game. Does it show enough interest, does it show enough promise and interest that I want to replay it? Because if it's obvious that the balance is there, it probably is too simple a game to hold my interest. It's probably not going to meet that initial requirement. Like if I can obviously see this is a balanced game, and that goes even for simple abstract and stuff. Tic-tac-toe, very obviously, it's not a balanced game. Well, okay, it is a balanced game, but not in the way you want, right? But that's very clear. But in 13 days, it looks pretty clear that the game is fairly balanced, but there aren't enough mechanisms going on to keep my interest. That's why it's easy to assess. With this, my gut feeling is that it's probably balanced. But then again, I didn't even play it with the balancing factor in play. What I did was played it with the unbalanced in play and still saw a very close game. And I think
a very close game won by the person who had all the advantages. They won by 1 point. I think that's going to come out that way just because you just have so many pieces and you have so many edges going to you, and so many little, and then there's like the extra pool pieces gives you another victory point. 3 pieces, that's 1 point. That's enough to control one area, one sector of the campaign. In terms of narrative, I don't find myself getting drawn into it at all, which is kind of a sad thing. I'm not how much of a simulation of the events it is. Well, who am I? What am I? I am someone who's triggering events. I'm the spirit of unionism versus secessionism. It's very hard to tell what victory means. It doesn't mean an edge in the upcoming Civil War. That's what would kind of... That's what Herman's idea of it being kind of a strategic will for that side seems to imply. Having trouble figuring out who I am is always kind of difficult for me. So, am I Lincoln and Davis? Why do I control the things that I do if I am? This is one that I prefer to see almost as a pure game, which, almost an abstract, but one that's not truly an abstract. The events and everything that are going on are things that apply to a reality. It's just that I'm not seated in someone who can make these decisions. And because this is a crisis and it's fast moving and things are going weird, and the game doesn't have any single endpoint goal that makes sense for a person to be reaching towards. So I would compare this in some ways to 1960. It may be a little... See, it feels heavier to me, but that's because things like the electoral system are baked into my head already, right? They're just known. So the scoring system and the designs for this are probably actually a little lighter than what's in play in 1960 or the other political CDGs. There are some multiplayer ones that I always want to plug. A couple of them by Numbskull that I like, Bull Moose and Divided Republic. I don't think either of them are particularly balanced or good historical games, but they cover other elections that I really wanted to see covered. So whenever I talk about 1960, I have to put a plug in for them, just because the idea behind them is one that I want to see. Not that they're necessarily well implemented as either history or as balanced games, but going away from this, so. This feels about on the same level as 1960. It's a little lighter, I think. It takes a little less time in terms of that. In terms of the rules, it's a little harder to internalize these rules because the ones, although not everything in 1960 is this way, but the core idea of victory is well defined in a presidential race, and you know who you are. Here, you don't really know who you are, so it's kind of hard to link yourself into that story. It becomes, the play of the game becomes more about, well, what am I doing with these cards and how do I manipulate these, and that becomes the strategy and everything. And to me, that's a weak point. When a game is about something, I kind of want to place myself into that story and not just be, some sort of random force that is supporting one side or another. But it does kind of show one of the core criticisms that I have of CDGs, which is quite often they give the player who I associate with a role abilities that I don't think that role, well, that I know that role shouldn't have. Like, oh, look, I'm going to make the weather bad. I can either make the weather bad or I can deliver enough supplies to march my army. what? I guess those two connect, but in some cases, I'm really stretching it to find any kind of connection between the two choices. And why do I get to choose which weather it is? Whether it's good enough that I get to move units, or bad enough that I get some kind of advantage in a battle that might help me, or I can slip away from someone or something. With this, I'm not faced with that problem because I'm just playing the game. I can't be drawn into the story in a position that's rooted in the story. And that's kind of the thing. When I see a narrative, I want to know who I am and what I'm doing to drive that narrative. And in this, I don't feel that at all. All I'm doing is playing the game. It is the same as if I'm playing some of the abstracts. And and I find myself, all too often playing CDGs or playing coin games or a lot of these other newer designs in too gamey a fashion, where I'm not getting my full enjoyment out of that. I wouldn't expect to be able to get the kind of enjoyment that I'm talking about out of something like this, in terms of getting that full narrative story. I don't feel that at all. Another one this kind of reminds me of is Mark Wallace's Liberté, where the history and everything seems linked in a way, this not in a surprising way given that this is Mark Herman, but and is designed to the history in a more explicit sort of way. But in Liberté, I feel some of the things I can make some hand-waving arguments, as to why things happen the way they do and why things are controlled the way they are, that I kind of like. But in either case, I'm just playing a game with what amounts to, I think, theme. I don't feel like this is a game that I can really put and say there's a subject linkage, because I can't place that role within the game. I cannot figure out who the player is. The player is the god of abolition and the god of unionism. I mean, and when I start getting into that position, I don't feel like I'm playing a simulation anymore, because I don't feel like the inputs match things that someone would control. So you're not actually testing something. I'm not testing something that I see as reasonable. My inputs in this are, what if, certain random events happened at certain times, as opposed to I have an overarching strategy that I'm testing out against a system that can express that strategy. And I think that that is actually a criticism against any event-driven game. Even ones that are purely random, is that, okay, there are inputs that are outside the player's control. I don't mind some of those. Some of those are part of the model. But once you start giving player control of it, it starts degrading the capability of it as a simulation that's testing something that I believe in. And this goes, when I look at most CDGs, I can say, well, I've got certain strategies, and the cards are part of the randomizer for it. And that gamey gameplay is a part of the model part. It's not part of the player input that proper for the strategy. It's like being able to calculate an odds table correctly and making the right choices on there. That's part of the game model. If the player fails at that, or makes mistakes in that, or forgets to move pieces or something, that's no longer part of the general input of real player decision making, and I can put that in the same realm. In this, though, I don't feel like there's anything in the player input, or there's very, very little that makes it a simulation. So that I do feel kind of, I'm going to focus on Fort Sumter. What does that mean? Does that mean putting more troops there? it doesn't feel like I'm putting troops there. It feels like I'm just putting will there, you know? If something that I can put in the newspaper is the equivalent to something I can put in Fort Sumter, if I'm paying the same stuff, I'm beginning to get a little bit not understanding the simulation of that. That said, though, it's a fun game around the theme of the secession crisis rather than one that's directly linked to the topic for me. And I was surprisingly pleased by the actual gameplay side of it, which is something I did not feel at all with 13 Days. A lot of people loved it and are like, oh, it's Twilight Struggle, stripped down, way down, but it's all the same strategy. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's got none of that to me. I am not making the same kind of decisions at all. I'm putting, I'm trying to maximize, to optimize victory points on a fairly simple plane, and that's all I'm trying to do. And Twilight Struggle, however, like most CDGs that are out there, does feel like it's trying to simulate the role in the decision making. I can link them, even though there's some fuzzy areas around the cards and stuff. But that's like not playing against someone who doesn't optimize their CRT. Whatever. There's gameplay elements of the model, and I don't mind those being present, and I don't mind the optimization of those. Paths of Glory, I'm not so sure about. I'm not sure that's a simulation. The gameplay elements, I feel like they actually distort the history to a point that's problematic. But anyway, this one, who knows? It is a game, and it's a fun game. So on one play, would it get boring after a while? How the hell can I know? I play games once, and then maybe never will see them again in my life at this point in time. I enjoyed this. I would gladly, break this out. The one gripe I have is this big box. I'm thinking about, I'd like to bring this to the game store. Well, if it was 13 days, I could drop it. Well, that may be a little big. But yeah, if it was in the 13 days size box, which is about like this, I could drop it in, a big pocket, a small bag, something like that. This, I'm carrying something that's the same size as a lot of games, and it's hard for me to justify something that I'm going to spend 30, 45 minutes maybe. I don't know what the playtime is on this. Boy, I'm taking way too much time on this chatter, am I not? Yeah, they say 20 to 40 minutes. So yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to carry a box for a half-hour game. Now, obviously, Eurogamers are willing to do it. Plenty of Euros have a big box and take a half hour to an hour. I find that a little bit harder to justify. But, I did it with Acquire and some of the other 3M games every now and then. I guess. I don't know if I actually carried them or counted on other people to carry them. For me, a filler should be in a small box if possible. And this certainly could have been in a much smaller box. I don't know how I would feel about that. Obviously this is more attractive and everything, and it drags your attention if you see it sitting on the bookshelf. But just personal taste. And I mean, it's not like I couldn't unpack it and put it in a baggie or something and say, screw the box, I don't need that if I'm taking it to play somewhere. But I wouldn't. I like to drop a game in my pocket if it's going to be a short game like this. All right, let's send it on. Pretty minor complaint, right?